Hey everybody, this is Joyce Chapper, almost live from the pits, and we're here with Norm DeWitt. Now, Norm, this is book number 2, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Oh my gosh, and I'm sitting here looking at it. I've been watching this on Facebook. I swear you're being like a total tease about making it faster. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. About 3 years ago, Dan Bink's family approached me. He's the crew chief for the Le Mans factory Corvette team. They approached me and said they'd like me to tell Dan's story. So it started out that way, and I suddenly realized this could be so much more. The first chapter is the Dan Bink story. The next 11 chapters are kind of a technical analysis from the people involved on how they figured things out in racing across the last 3 generations of racers. And I managed to, from my side on the motorsports journalism, I was able to bring in everybody from Sterling Moss to up through current day with Rubens Barrichello and Takuma Sato and Scott Dixon, explaining nuances. I had the run of the Dallara factory, courtesy Gianpaolo Dallara, and he basically told everybody, you answer his questions. It's just been a phenomenal experience. I've got the whole front row for that amazing 75th running of the Indy 500 of Rick Mears, AJ Foyt, and Mario Andretti, all helping me an enormous amount, along with Parnelli Jones, Joe Leonard, so many other legends from across the eras. And
this is phenomenal. I mean, these are all racing legends that you've been hearing about for years and years and years. And actually, you've been privy to a lot of this because, see, one of the things about Norm is when he does motorsports and he covers automotive, you do features, you do all these long, in-depth stories versus just, news as to what's happening on a daily basis.
Exactly. I work with the racers. A lot of it helps is that, I was basically weaned on this stuff, taken to races all over the place when I was a little kid. And then eventually I had my own racing career. Dan Binks, ironically, and I both ended up at the National Championship runoffs back in the 80s. Me as a driver and Dan as wrenching on the cars. And so I have a lot of hands-on experience, plus my architectural training. I'm a licensed architect, and so I had all the engineering. So I can talk with the engineers and understand what's going on. So I was able to bring in all these engineering legends and all the drivers to explain how they figured these things out over the years. Everything from ground effects cars to, even Don Garlitz with the rear engine revolution that he pioneered in drag racing.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this has got to be totally fascinating when you're preparing for this book.
It's a labor of love. And I'm really honored. A lot of the reason I called it Making It Faster is that not only is it an apt description of the book, but Sir Jackie Stewart has helped me a great deal. That he had suffered with dyslexia, undiagnosed until he was an adult, and Dan Bink similarly had still to this day undiagnosed learning disabilities that he dealt with early on. And both of them found, through complete and total dedication and focus, amazing success in their chosen careers. So Jackie Stewart has been a huge help to me, and his book when I was in high school was called Faster. So it's a bit of a personal homage from me to Jackie Stewart for having been so involved and helped me with this book. It really means a lot to me. He was my childhood hero.
Did you talk to him about the title before you decided to name it that?
No, I showed it to him at Laguna Seca a couple of months ago. And I said, there's a reason Faster's in the title. He just kind of looked at me, looked at me and smiled. So,
What was the most surprising thing you discovered? I mean, you've been covering motorsports for quite some time as a journalist, and I mean, in doing something like this, do you have some doors open to you larger than you've had before, especially like the factories?
Well, Audi was an enormous help. I had Ulrich Beretsky, who's the father of the Audi diesel program at Le Mans. Ulrich and I spent an enormous amount of time, along with Alan McNish, explaining the genesis and development of all the different versions of the Audi diesel. And then also I've got the last chapter is called The Future, and I was able to get some incredible inside information on all the new hybrid programs from the drivers and engineers, stuff that the PR people would say they're not going to tell you anything, but I got news for you. They all told me a lot, and so I got all these inside information stories on the development of these hybrid programs at Porsche and Audi and Toyota. The head of the Toyota program in P1 at Le Mans actually answered a ton of my questions. So I've been very fortunate.
Wow.
I've had amazing access.
Yeah, you've had amazing access, because this is something like, it's not like he just decided to write a book and he didn't know any of these people and you're trying to get information. You've already been covering these people and you've had a lot of very good referrals to be able to have access to it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, like with the Penske team. I'd worked with Roger and Rick Mears, and I know some of the guys on the crew and et cetera. So it was more like revisiting and saying, hey, here's my current project and I really need to talk to Roger. I really need to spend some time with Rick. And like the development of the first Penske PC7, their first ground effects car.
Oh my God.
And Derek Walker, who was one of the engineers at the time, he was with Penske for a number of years, and Bobby Unser, who was one of the drivers. I got them all on board to tell the story of the development of the Penske PC7. And at the same time, there was the Yellow Submarine Chaparral designed by John Barnard, and that was pretty much all implemented into a real design by Gordon Kimball, whose son now currently races Indy cars. And Gordon has helped me an enormous amount with the book. He was Ayrton Senna's engineer at McLaren as well. So I just had phenomenal access to everybody on the engineering and driving talent. And I've also got Jeremy Burgess from MotoGP. He's been Rossi's engineer. He's won probably almost half of the Premier Class World Championships in the last 30 years. Yeah, he was with Gardner. He's been with Rossi for almost a generation now.
Wow.
And so he explained a lot of the nuances and things regarding the bike side, which is in a lot of ways more complicated and complex.
The motorbikes are more complex than the cars?
In a lot of ways, because of the lean
angles.
Because
they're compact.
And you got to figure, what kind of contact patch are you talking about with a MotoGP bike? And yet you're feeding hundreds of horsepower into that. And it's an amazing part of the tale. So I had access to the MotoGP side as well.
Wow.
So I had, Valentino's helped a bit, and Nicky Hayden, and a few of the racers I work with on that side as well. Jorge Lorenzo, who is very much a help. He's always been fantastic to work with. So.
Wow. So what was the most revealing, or unexpected surprise that you discovered?
The real story behind the Delta Wing.
Why?
It's everybody. I've read an awful lot of stories about how the Delta Wing project went, and everybody missed on a few key aspects of it. That I went straight to the designer and I said, "This looks like this to me," and he said, "You're absolutely right," and that opened the floodgates. So that's pretty much the end of the book, was the story of the Delta Wing, because so it's actually nothing is all that new.
And of course, for those of you that don't know what a Delta Wing is, and you're thinking it's a wing on a Delta airplane, what would that?
That's actually fairly accurate as to viewing this car in plan, and that's the secret of its success. And it's not new. So, and I was fortunate to work with some of the designers from 30 years ago that were involved in discovering the same things when they didn't have the kind of flow dynamics programs and things they have now, where you could run a simulation. And so they didn't know what they'd discovered, they just knew it worked.
Actually, I'm kind of fascinated, because with what you're talking about that's in this book, this actually could be like, so we say, textbook for engineers.
I've tried to keep it more in the realm of stories. I don't want to scare people off and say, yeah, this is all equations and roll centers and things like that. I get into that a bit here and there, but not really the calculation side. It's more the stories of how they figured it out.
But the stories behind the equations.
Well, sometimes it's, some of this stuff, it was, we did this 6 years ago, and it did this. And it took them 6 years to connect the dots, and it changed racing forever.
Wow.
And sometimes things like those stories are the most amazing ones of all. And I've been very fortunate to have so many people from endurance, the top levels of endurance racing,
Yeah.
IndyCar, Formula One, and MotoGP, all willing to sit down and talk with me and answer my endless questions. And I'm just blessed.
That's actually very fascinating. I'm sitting there thinking, you talked about the future of making it faster. We're not talking about the future of the book, but about making automobiles faster and motorbikes faster.
All the new hybrid and emerging technologies and concepts that are going on right now, yeah.
So
it's
where do you
amazing.
think we're really going to be like in 5 years or 10 years?
That's why we're trying all these different concepts, Toyota with their supercapacitor versus the Williams carbon flywheel energy recovery system. There's so many different systems out there right now, and the cream will rise to the top as to what is, and it may be something out of left field that we haven't thought of right now, which is what makes it fascinating.
That is true. Now, you are holding in your hands, this is, shall we call it a prototype?
Actually, this is the flyer for the book, but the book cover is going to be black and otherwise very, very, very similar to this, because the colors of the Pratt & Miller Corvette team have always traditionally been black and yellow.
Were you trying to honor them?
Well, being as Dan is their crew chief, I thought it was kind of, and it's the factory Corvette team. I mean, everybody's seen the yellow Corvettes that go to Le Mans and do quite well, and Dan is a huge part of that. So,
that's awesome.
But he previously, Tommy Kendall wrote the foreword, and Tommy and Dan won, I think, 9 championships together for years at Roush. They were, Jack Roush has helped me some with the book, as is Greg Biffle and other people that Dan worked with over the years when he was at Roush. And they dominated the Trans Am series like nobody since Mark Donohue and Roger Penske. So all those stories are in there, and how they built that car and took advantage of every loophole and found every little trick. Some of the stuff you just sit and laugh.
I know, I'm watching your face with...
Oh, it's just an amazing tale of just incredible creative rule bending, but bending, not breaking. So, the gray area.
The very gray area.
Yes, living in the gray area.
And what is the...
Well, would you like to hear one story from the book?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yes. I'll give you one
You're
from that.
You're trying not to give away the book, but
I'll give away this one.
Or just
the Trans Am series adopted this Klotz fuel manufacturer testing rig to determine what is illegal fuel. And so Dan immediately then contacted Klotz and said, okay, how much for you to build the most badass fuel that will pass your own test? Because there was nothing excluded using Klotz for fuel. So Binks, they said, well, we'd want you to buy 7,000 gallons. And Binks is with Roush. He says, okay, we can do that. He said it was like pouring in 20 more horsepower than anybody else had on the grid, because they had developed this fuel that would always pass their own test.
Of course.
Was this huge advantage on everything else on the grid. And that's just like one small aspect of the tons of stuff that Kendall and Binks had at their disposal with Roush Racing.
It's like you just open your minds as to like how the interpretation is done and how much actually goes into racing.
It's like the endless battle between ballistics and armor. There's always somebody trying to build an armor that will resist the current ballistics, and so people are trying to develop stuff that will penetrate it. And that's what it's like between these guys and the rule makers.
Oh my God.
And these guys are normally a little more clever than most of the rule makers.
Yeah.
So it makes for a pretty fascinating read.
Oh, actually, I'm really looking forward to it. So, okay, Norm, when can we get our hands on the book?
I'm saying December, early December. I'm not sure on the exact date. I'll put the launch date on makingitfaster.com. Okay. Because currently it's being put into the 3 different electronic formats, and we're working towards a print edition. I don't know if it's all going to hit at once, but it will certainly be available before Christmas time in an electronic format. And if you go to makingitfaster.com, I'll keep all the updates there.
Are you doing pre-orders?
I haven't done that.
Okay.
Maybe I should,
get
but I have
to
not.
Norm about pre-orders, because see, it's coming out for this holiday season. This is really cool. It's very, very cool.
It's been 3 years
Yeah.
of an enormous amount of work. I was just talking to Mario Andretti about an hour ago, and they were delighted to hear that it's finally done.
Wow.
So, and you know, it brings a smile to Mario Andretti's face. That's good enough for me.
I think so.
I'll go talk to Garlitz next. It's a good life.
It's a good life.
It's a good life, Joyce.
MakeItUpFaster.com. Coming out from Norm DeWitt.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thanks, Norm.
Always a pleasure.